Welcome to Satluj TV News. You're watching the News Hour with Angus Scott in London. It's Tuesday the 16th of May. These are the main headlines from around the world. Drones and missiles batter Kyiv as Zelensky secures more European military aid. The US condemns India for persistent religious violence against minorities. The FBI's investigation into Trump's Russian ties based on flimsy evidence and seriously flawed. The number of dead mounts after serious hostel fire in New Zealand. And tiny traces of DNA that we all leave behind us in the air lead to warnings of unethical surveillance and tracking. Welcome to the News Hour. These are today's main stories in detail. Russian drones and ballistic missiles attacked Ukraine's capital early this morning in what the Defence Forces called an exceptionally complex strike, a day after President Volodymyr Zelensky said he would return from a European tour with a restocked weapons arsenal. This morning's attack, the 8th on the capital this month, involved drones, cruise missiles and probably ballistic missiles launched from different directions simultaneously. The barrage follows Zelensky's tour of Europe over the last few days, which secured military aid from France, $3 billion of military aid from Germany, and further promises from UK Prime Minister Sunak, who recently agreed to ship cruise missiles to Ukraine. As the search for an endgame to the war continues, high-ranking Chinese diplomat Li Hui has just arrived in Kyiv for a 2-day visit. The United States wants India to condemn persistent religious violence, a senior official has said, 1 month before a state visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The State Department's annual report on religious freedom, which listed attacks against religious minorities including Muslims and Christians in the billion-plus nation led by Modi's Hindu nationalists. The official spoke of India's vast potential and said he was saddened by the persistence of religious violence. New Delhi has long hit back at American criticism on religious freedom, particularly by the autonomous US Commission on International Religious Freedom, which earlier this month once again recommended that the State Department put India on a blacklist over its record. The FBI investigation into alleged collusion between Russia and Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign was based on flimsy evidence and seriously flawed, an independent US report has announced. The 300-page report follows a 4-year investigation and was highly critical of the origins of Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI's probe into allegations of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. It further stated that the FBI and the Justice Department had displayed double standards in the manner in which they investigated Trump and his 2016 rival for the White House, Democrat Hillary Clinton, in what it implied was clear political bias. A fire ripped through a 4-storey hostel in New Zealand's capital in the early hours this morning, killing at least 6 people as others fled for their lives, with some plucked from the roof. Towering flames and thick smoke could be seen pouring from the top-floor windows of the Loafers Lodge hostel in central Wellington during the night, as 80 firefighters and 20 trucks battled the blaze. Firefighters found 6 bodies inside the charred building, but a roof collapse on the top floor prevented them from searching all of the 92-room hostel. About 90 people were thought to have been in the building when the blaze began, the cause of which is being treated as suspicious. The death toll in cyclone-hit villages of Myanmar's Rakhine state has today risen to at least 41. With winds of up to 195 km per hour, Cyclone Mocha made landfall on Sunday, downing power pylons and smashing wooden fishing boats to splinters. Contact is slowly being restored with Sittwe, which is home to around 150,000 people, with roads being cleared and internet connections re-established. The ruling junta has hindered reports of the disaster being revealed, particularly relating to the large Rohingya refugee camps, who have yet to receive any state aid. Thousands of Palestinians from across the occupied West Bank demonstrated yesterday, waving flags to mark the 75th anniversary of the Nakba, or catastrophe, which they associate with Israel's creation. During that time, more than 760,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled from their homes in 1948. Commemoration of the Nakba this year comes during heightened tensions in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has claimed more than 170 lives on both sides since the start of the year. Kenya and Somalia have agreed to reopen their common border after more than a decade, as ties warm between the two neighbours following years of tensions. The announcement came after a high-level joint ministerial meeting in Nairobi on cooperation, including security, as well as trade and the movement of people. The frontier had been officially closed in 2011 because of attacks on Kenyan soil by the radical Islamist Somali group Al-Shabaab, which has been waging an insurgency against the central government in Mogadishu for more than 15 years. Argentina's central bank has hiked its base interest rate by 6 points to 97% as the government prepares to announce a spate of measures to tackle soaring inflation ahead of October's general election. It is the second time in less than a month that the bank has ramped up interest rates, as year-on-year inflation hit an almost 109% in April. Argentina's economy has infamously suffered high inflation for decades after consistent political mismanagement. This year, the cost of living has risen by 31% since January the 1st, in the country where more than 39% of the population now live in poverty. A German court is to deliver verdicts today in the trial of 6 members of a criminal gang accused of what's been dubbed the largest art heist in modern history. The thieves made away with a haul worth more than €113 million from the Green Vault Museum in Dresden in November 2019. Although many of the historic pieces were recovered as part of a plea deal, some are feared lost forever. The haul included a diamond-encrusted sword and a shoulder piece which contained the famous 49-carat Dresden white diamond. And finally, the traces of genetic material that humans constantly shed wherever they go could soon be used to track individual people, or even whole ethnic groups, scientists have said, warning of an ethical quagmire. A recently developed technique can glean a huge amount of information from tiny samples of genetic material called environmental DNA or eDNA that humans and animals leave behind everywhere, including in the air. Exploiting this involuntarily shed genetic information risks putting all of us under perpetual genetic surveillance. The scientists warn that harvesting human eDNA without consent could be used to track individual people or even target vulnerable populations or ethnic minorities. And those were some of today's main news headlines from around the world. You've been watching the News Hour on Satellite TV, and you can find more stories in detail on our channel SatNet News. So it's worth clicking on that subscribe button to make sure you get to see stories as they're broadcast. And don't forget, if you have any comments or any opinions on any of our news stories, you can comment below, or indeed drop us a direct message at message@satellitetv.com, and we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. For Satellite TV News, I'm Angus Scott in London.